Hello. Welcome to Drinks with Ron. I'm Ron, and let's get something on the platter. Should have given me a copyright violation. I love that squeaky sound. This is anybody familiar? 70s funk. This is Slave. You know, and I believe that rubber ducky would be CB down here. He's in charge of keyboards and all things off the wall. I love that title. If I were to start a band and I had the cash for enough people, I would add one of those. All things off the wall guy. But I don't have a drink. Hold on. I have a drink. I just don't have a drink. Let me. There it is. Fresh off the tap, we have I have the taps up and running again. You know, we got the Greg Cody Show sticker, the Radio Mofo sticker. He might be a future guest on my podcast. It's worth the wait. I usually make this once a year in the spring. Just got it kegged. I'm gonna probably bottle about half of this batch and distribute it to some people who have been asking. And then the other half, I'm going to add mango flavoring to my Rue beer. Yeah. But, man, lights are killing me, man. I'm fucking spent most of the day processing apples. See, much like the rhubarb, which I grow out back, and the hops, which I grow out back, I got an apple tree. So I like to basically grow and use as many things as I can in my own beer. So today, apples. I ate applesauce for about a week straight at work. A little crock pot about the size of my fist. Well, the opening inside is about the size of my fist. 3, 4, 5 apples, depending on the size. Chop them up, put them in there in the morning, a little bit of sugar, and by lunchtime, I had a crock pot full of applesauce. But there's only so much applesauce a man can eat, and I had burned out on it. But now, here we are. I still had a pile of apples up there. I've got another box on the counter that are the more red ones. I picked some of them a little early, and I still have a branch on the tree full. So, made 2 crock pots of applesauce today. Crock pot of apple butter is still working on it. My wife and kid made little tiny, like in the tiny cupcake molds, cut pieces of pie crust and made little tiny apple pies, and fantastic. And now she's up there with her friend and they are juicing a bunch of apples, which frankly really makes me want to get one of those juicers and next year make apple wine. But as I was told, juicer's like $500, and I don't want juice that bad, okay? For that price, I would just go buy apple juice and make apple wine. But like I said, that's not the point of this. The point isn't that I want to make apple wine, it's that I grow apples and I want to use them in my stuff. Raspberries out there. I used to make a raspberry ale. That was kind of a yearly deal. Really good. But kind of burned out on all the appling. I'm going to do some more editing for the aforementioned podcast. And I know there's a little bit of crossover. You notice in one of those Venn diagrams, 2 circles, the Drinks with Ron show and the Half-Ass Podcast Network. I think there's about that much overlap. Well, a sliver in the middle there where it makes one of those. So a few of you know about the Half-Ass Podcast Network, available anywhere you get your podcasts. But I started this a couple years ago. Buddy of mine, Jonah, who has been on the show, we've been talking about doing fantasy football stuff for years. Back to when we were like, hey, if we made a website, is that something people would do? So now it's like, well, let's just do a fantasy pod. And my brother-in-law, Derek, who has been on the show as well, we decided we'd just do a podcast of random banter. So I thought, okay, see, here's the thing. I'm borderline, like ADD. So I was like, I know between Jonah and Derek, there's not going to be enough shit to keep me busy. And I'm also cheap. So paying $100 a year for a podcast, the prospect of putting out 6 episodes, I don't like it. Because, see, I do this thing here. on YouTube, which is free. And if you watch the show, you know the format. I don't pre-produce. I don't plan anything. The most prep I will do is knowing what story I'm going to tell going in. That's usually the most I will ever do. So there's no work here. I hit record with the remote, I ramble, I drink a beer, I hit stop, I hit upload, and then I go do my post-game activities. And by the time I'm done with my post-game activities, it's uploaded, ready to go. Now let me tie all this together. See, I've told you how I don't do a whole lot of work here, but I've got a pretty good amount of viewers, considering we're 80s, 100s sometimes. We've got over 100 subscribers now, so that's good. But, yeah, so minimal work, fairly decent payoff. Like I said, it's not about the clicks for me, or because if it was, I would have knocked this shit off years ago. No, it's not about the clicks. It's about being creative, producing a thing. That initially this was just a way to talk to my friends who we all got older and had kids and didn't talk. So it was like, oh, hey, I'll do a thing where it's like we're drinking. So that's how the show started. And as I said, I pay for the podcast, which is weird, and then don't get nearly as many listeners as I get viewers here. And it was just like, yeah, I can't justify paying for this and then not producing things. So let me just take the whole thing back. Okay, hang on. Actually, let me top this off. So, like I told you, I had those 2 podcasts under my network, and then the next plan was I was going to do a 3rd pod where I just interview people I know about a random, what I like to call low percentage experience. Something they've done that not a lot of other people have done. Like my example was I officiated a wedding dressed as a Jedi. Not a lot of people you're going to run into have done that. So that was going to be my 3rd show. And then the 4th show, which is I never got off the ground, was just going to be me interviewing people who were tripping. I don't know where you just find people tripping and patch them into your call, which was kind of the issue. And anybody tripping doesn't really want to sit there and be interviewed via Zoom. So it didn't really happen. But the idea was I was going to have 3 to 4 shows where I could keep just creating content. I wouldn't have to wait for Jonah to be free or Derek to be. So I was like, yeah, I can get enough shows. I can keep this thing going, justify the time and the money. Yeah, it'll be cool. So I was online, this dude in a fantasy league, and he came to me about doing a fantasy football podcast. Now, you've heard me mention, I already have one with Jonah, and Jonah and I do dynasty football. So that's fantasy football, but you keep your entire team year after year. So the strategy there and how you do it, completely different than just your regular redraft one-year football leagues. I will play in 1 or 2 of those. Not a big fan of them. They're fun, but it's like stock market gambling, but you only get that year. So those little bumps. Whereas a dynasty, you ride all those out. You know, guy peaks, he valleys, like whatever. You hang on to him, you get it in the aggregate, however you want to do it. So anyway, I was like, well, I'll produce your show, because as I said, I'm looking for shit to do. But I said, I'm not, daily, weekly redraft fantasy is not my thing. So he pitched me an idea, him and another guy, and they would do a weekly fantasy show. I was going to be basically producer and 3rd voice, only chiming in if they needed me. I was just going to hang back and let them run with it. Well, in the meantime, see, a group of us in this fantasy league were big fans of the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz. So we had kicked this idea around of, let's do a draft of the people on the Le Batard Show. And this dude was like, let's do it over Twitter. He wanted to do like a thread where we drafted live. And I was like, what if we recorded this whole thing and then put it out as like an audio episode? You know, we can debut. So basically, then everything kind of shifted. We were going to take, I'd already had imaging done for this fantasy show. Thank God it's fantasy. You're going to get it. So the imaging was done. It was like, well, let's just take this, plug this in, So we do the Le Batard Show draft, 2 episodes, probably 2 of our most clicked episodes ever, honestly, still. But we did them, and then it was like, hey, this crew of people, that was fun. We stayed here for like 4 hours in a Zoom meeting getting shit can hammered. I was like, I kind of like to keep doing this. So we kept doing that. Which was weird because then, even though it was named Thank God It's Fantasy, the show had nothing to do with fantasy. And in fact, the title, none of the imaging, none of it fit. But we did that for about 9 months. We got down to the end of last year. There was some issues over who was in control of the show and who was running things. And, well, let's just say TGIF is no longer a show. But the format had kind of come together, and the crew was good. So we basically redrafted a crew, changed the name, rebranded, re-imaged, and got a format for the thing. Because the TGIF was basically, we just get hammered for 4 hours and bullshit, and then I would have to try to cut that down to maybe 2 hours worth of usable material. We weren't really trying to do a show. We were and we weren't. We were trying to make content, but we're basically just bullshitting. So yeah, we did the NFL draft last year, and yeah, I think we got 1 or 2 episodes out of it. Whereas, yeah, now that we do it, it's all basically real time. I don't lose much. If we have a 3.5 hour session, it's probably 3 episodes. But where I'm going with this is, we've now established the Outsiders Social Club. We have done 9 months in this new year. Everything is formatted, which the old show, it was really weird. Because like I said, we would record. It would be just a shit show of audio, which I would try to piece together, find themes, ways to tie everything together. And then I'd come up with sounders and different bits to put in, which all had to go in post. So while I'm editing this, I have to stop, I'd back out, I'd go open a new file, create a thing. I have to make the whole sounder from scratch, bring it back, put it in. Because I was producing the sounds as they were needed. It wasn't like I had, so we changed all that. I said, look, if we're gonna keep doing this, I've got to have a format, there's got to be a structure, we've got to know what we're doing, we have to get dates scheduled, we have to get topics scheduled. The first hour of the recording, we have to have a theme of what the fuck we're doing. There's got to be an episode here going in, so I know we are doing X, Y, Z. And then after that hour, post game. Let's just get hammered, and we'll call it the post game of that episode. But being able to do all this shit ahead of time, knowing what you're going to need for sounders, and then of course I got the little soundboard. So the little soundboard, now I'm not putting things in post. They're made ahead of time, and they're ready to roll. So I'm saving a shitload of time on the production end because everything's done, and I'm saving a shitload of time in the editing end because everything is done, and I'm saving more time in the editing end because there's a structure. Basically, we were trying to go weekly with TGIF. Now we are going twice a week. That wasn't even the plan. The plan was to stick with weekly, but then in January we did the episodes basically introducing the show and the crew. We did one of me, Joe Vegas, and Troy. Got us on the books, introduced to everybody, and then the next episodes, we brought the rest of the crew in. We kind of gave them an introduction. So we rebranded, and then we had so much audio from that. I was like, shit, if we're doing it weekly, we're already all the way through February. What if I went Monday and Friday? So basically, we're recording maybe a little more often than TGIF, but I'm able to produce everything more than twice as fast. Trying to explain to this other guy that all this little shit adds up to work for me. Every week I recorded an intro, so every week was different. It was, welcome to TGIF, blah, 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 starring, and then everyone got their own little tagline. Joe Vegas as the resident degenerate gambler, and Troy from Idaho as the godfather of drinks. So I had to do this every week, and then you realize just that simple act of putting down the audio track and recording the voiceover take me 30, 40 minutes by the time everything was said and done. you know, fire up the computer, and that's after the intro was already produced. I'm just putting that track down. So yeah, this way it's all streamlined. The intro comes right off the soundboard. We talk right over it. It's a lot more work than Drinks with Ron and a lot less listeners. So I'm just going to throw it out there that if you're a podcast type person, go find the Half-Ass Podcast. It's basically, one of the last few guests say, basically, there's like a Drinks with Ron is like an early version of this podcast. It's like, this podcast is basically Drinks with Ron if I then brought a crew in. But see here, I've got all this oxygen I have to fill. 10, 15 minutes I try to stay in the ballpark. Me rambling. You don't want gaps, you don't want... But on the show, it's different. I get to lay back. I'm more in the production chair. Master of ceremonies is what I go by. So I will direct a little traffic and try to steer some things. But mainly shit, I'm just hanging back waiting to drop in jokes when I get the window. So it's a nice change of pace. As I said, here is for 15 minutes. Oh, well, that seems like a good place to end, and I don't want to pay the fine, so... Ooh-wee. So for Drinks with Ron, I'm Ron, signing off.